great to be back. Thank you for having me, and it's lovely to get to talk with you again.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really important for us to talk about these amazing conversations that
Absolutely.
we had.
Absolutely. And I just can't thank Mitzrayim and Bridge enough for being so generous to trust themselves with Lynn and to reach out to me to be connected. And, you know, it really just makes, I think, a really big difference for the entire community. I know I've gotten a lot just like listening to those conversations, and I think we have a little bit to talk about those conversations tonight.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Not only generous, but both of you, I'm speaking to you, Mitzrayim and Bridge, so able to touch into your own deep feelings and to say them and to follow them. And it was quite a wonderful experience for us.
Absolutely.
So it brought up the theme for Zach and I, and maybe for all of you, of how to make a better relationship with yourself.
All parts of yourself.
All parts,
even the
yes.
ones you don't like,
Yes.
which is the problem that I have.
Well, I think we all have that problem.
Yeah, I know, right?
And the parts that you don't like are the parts that most need to be found, to be listened to be articulated.
To be held.
Yes. I used to like what Gene Genlin said. He's the founder of Focusing. He would say to his client, "Well, let's hear from the opposition." You know, and
That's
there's
amazing.
always
There's always an
part
opposition.
inside
Yeah,
that's
right.
not going along with our health promoting, full steam ahead approach, and we have to listen to that part. But I thought that I would start by telling you a little story about what it means to befriend yourself, or to find yourself, or to make a better relationship with yourself. You know, what is this self that you're making a better relationship with? As you say, all parts of that self. I was in the country. I have a house near the woods, and I love that solitude of the woods, and I'm walking in the woods, and I hear this music blaring in the woods of these sentimental, romantic old songs of loss and love. And I'm saying, what's going on? And my neighbor, my next door neighbor, who's up a hill, comes down, and I said, well, what's happening, Tony? And he says, oh, it's shit. This is the worst day of my life. This music is keeping me alive by a thread. My wife, who we were together for 20 years, over 20 years, she up and left me. And I said, oh, Tony, tell me about it. I don't know what happened to her. All of a sudden, I never beat her. I never went out drinking all night with the guys like my friends do. And she left me. I said, why do you have to leave? And she said, Tony, I'm sorry. I have to leave because I have to find myself. What the hell is that? She has to find herself. What is that? So that's my story about Tony, because he asks a very good question. What was his wife trying to find when she went off?
Did we find her to ask her?
No, I never did. But what is this self that needs finding?
Yeah.
And it was very invisible to Tony, which I think might have been the reason she had to leave to find it. He had no idea what she was talking about. But it brings up for us this question of what is the self. I think of this monk that I love, Brother David Stendhal Rast. You can find his YouTubes. And he talks about how we are always multiple. There's I and there's myself. I myself, we say. And the I is this sort of rational, linear, going along in our ordinary lives. And then there's this much larger self that's beyond our thinking, that has all kinds of parts to it, that is generational. It goes back generations and is formed by future anticipations. And it's that self that we have to learn to have a better relationship with. Now, I'm going to give some points about having a better relationship.
Please, yeah.
That came out of these discussions. The first point is that we have to recognize that there is a self. And I think that in the conversation with Mitzrayim, it was a real step when she said, I could call this an unknown self.
I remember
that. She recognized that there was
Doesn't
this
have to
self.
be this bad thing.
Yeah, it's unknown. She didn't know why that self wanted to stay in the room and wasn't interested in any of the things that give her joy. And so that first step of recognizing an inner self, that's what Tony didn't have. He didn't know there was such a thing, is a very important step. And then the second step with both our conversationalists was the step of listening to that self. And that's a very important, difficult step, because it's listening with receptivity and curiosity. Listening in a way that has kindness in it, that really wants to reach out to that self, because otherwise the self that is not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean, we lecture ourselves all the time and give ourselves great advice
or awful
or
names.
we insult.
Yeah, I know.
We insult ourselves.
I was saying on Self-Care Sunday, the things that I say to myself, if anybody else said them, I wouldn't be friends with those people. But why is it okay when I say it?
That's right. That's right. So we have to listen to ourselves the way a therapist listens, or a way a good friend listens, or the way a really wise parent listens. And be quiet enough and still enough to hear it. So the third is to that stillness, so that you can not only listen but really hear what that self is saying and hear its needs. Because problematic selves are often expressing needs and protests. And it's so important to know what they're getting at, because at the bottom, everybody wants to live. I mean, those selves aren't inherently destructive. They want something. And so, it's really incumbent upon us to listen to what they're needing and wanting. And I was so touched by Mitzrayim saying, I need somebody out there to take my hand. And I was so touched by Bridge saying, I need to accept that self that can't do as well as enjoying the self that can do. There's always a part of us that feels helpless, that feels like we can't do what we want to do. It never goes away. Nothing ever goes away. And the last thing, after we recognize and we listen and we're still and receiving, is to respond to that self. and respond with intention to help look for what it needs, to be on its side. And it doesn't mean you have to like all of its behaviors, right?
Sure.
But, it's like a kid. You don't like everything they do when they have a tantrum, but
Right, you also treat them like a kid, like you know that it's because they are a child that they're acting this way. It's not like there's
Yeah.
any defect with them
yeah,
or anything
yeah.
that needs to be fixed.
Right, right. You don't get rid of them just
Right.
because.
It would be ridiculous
Right, right.
to be angry at a 2-year-old for being 2 years old.
Yeah, and there's some people say, "Oh, that's so childish." There's always a child self in us. We're always, all of our ages. We don't grow out of any age. We just add other ages.
I love that.
Right?
I've been reading a fair amount of Mr. Rogers lately from the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood program. And it's just phenomenal how he writes about children and child development and the use of media to make a difference in early childhood
Oh, I'd like to read that.
education.
Send
Yeah.
it to me.
It's called You Are Special.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you have any other thoughts about?
The biggest thing for me
Yeah.
has been noticing that crappy little voice in the back of my head that has nothing good to say. And when I catch it saying things like, "You'll never be able to do that," or "What are you thinking," or "How could you," or basically the finger that's constantly pointed at me inside my head. If I could just bring some curiosity to that and
yes.
some attention to it without pushing it away,
Absolutely. Yeah.
holding it with my
Yeah,
attention,
Yeah.
and just letting it be okay
Right. Right.
in a way that it wants to not let anything be okay.
Right. Yes. And curiosity is really I always say to the therapists that I work with, when you can't get to empathy, you can get to curiosity. Curiosity comes first. I mean, you could be really disgusted with a part of yourself and you can't get to be empathic to it.
But you can get curious.
But you can get curious about it. Like, well, why is it like that?
Right. Beautifully said.
So we're going to end with a poem.
And it's called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome, and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life.
Love that last line about taking down the love letters and feasting on your own life.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so we hope that you'll feast on your own life until we see you again.
Until next time.